coming today. We're here now at the end of an intense but hopefully productive process for everyone. The purpose of which, of course, was not only to end up with some new messages, but more importantly, we'd say to transfer the process that you all learned back down in Sunny Isles, Florida in December of last year, and really start putting into practice so that you can immediately get that transfer of learning and really see and put into practice how all of this works. So we want to remind ourselves why we're here. We're here because we generally, when we're presenting for business or making sales.
You don't mind going behind the person speaking into the mic?
Because you're recording. I can do that. Yeah, absolutely. Remind ourselves why we're here that typically when we are putting business presentations together, the old way is to start by talking about ourselves, by filling it full of information that's about us and why we're the right choice. Forgetting, of course, that most people, when they're hearing about a new product or service or even a company for the first time, need to be convinced that there's some change that needs to be made in the first place. So we wanted to move from something that was very company-centric, very sender-centric, the word that we love to use, with just too much stuff, that's very topic-driven, and move towards something that is very focused on the customer, something that's problem-oriented, that follows a really logical narrative, that follows what they want to know and the questions that they would ask in the order they would ask them. And more importantly, that it serves to land a large number of big ideas. Of course, powerfully landed a small number of big ideas, And the real benefit of that, of getting to a point of what we're looking at today, is so that when you all present to a customer, so that the customer then can, in turn, when you're not in the room, give a similar version of the same message to the other people in their organization who will make the decisions for them. So that's the goal. And what we've seen with other clients that we've worked with is that has done any number of good things for their sales process. It shortens cycle times. It has increased conversion rates. And so what we're doing here today is really checking these messages. We've spent since the beginning of December putting them together. And so we like to consider this not so much a pitch review as an architecture check. What we're doing today is listening for this new style of conversation, making sure that the intellectual argument, the structure of how we're putting this together is exactly what we would want it to be, so that when we're in a more real life situation where it's going to be two-way, customers are going to be asking questions, we as presenters are really solid in what is the message that we're trying to get across. So we've got two guests in the room, is that correct? Yes, just one guest in the room. Two guests in the room, fabulous, all right. Well, I think in order to understand a bit more about what you're going to see here, it's important to understand some of the intellectual underpinnings of what we're talking about. And one of the main tools that these teams used is a tool that we call the pyramid of planned outcome. Now, the pyramid part is probably fairly easy to figure out. It's a triangle. I'll show you in just a minute. But the planned outcome piece comes as a response to how do we make sure that the customer and not we as a company is the center of the communication we're going to put forward. So planned outcome refers to the action that we want that customer to take. Everything you're going to see here, all the messages that we build as a company and we build with our clients, start with this understanding that every communication that matters is meant to drive action. So if we start with that action, what is the action that we want a customer to take as a result of this communication, and plan back from that, then we can make sure that we're not putting all that extra stuff in that doesn't belong. So how do we get there? Well, the tool starts with a triangle, as promised. Sitting at the top of the triangle is the action that we want that customer to take. Sitting above that is, let's see if we can get that to work. This is in essence what we want someone to do or think differently as a result of that particular communication. So in an early stage conversation with a prospective client or customer, it might be to get the next meeting with some decision makers. Later stage, it might be to make a buy decision or to run a pilot or to start with some large or small engagement. The next thing that we need to do is that even if all by itself we know what it is that we want a customer to do, they're not going to do that just because we want them to. There needs to be a reason why they would do it. So fundamental to the approach that we take is that all of this, all of the action that we're talking about needs to answer some unmet need that the customer currently has, some problem that the customer is dealing with on a day-to-day basis or is about to. Sometimes that problem is known, sometimes it's unknown. But in either case, we need to make sure that that's present and that we're starting there so that we immediately establish relevance. Even that's not enough to get people to act, though. So just because we know what somebody wants to do and we know why they might need to do it, we need to figure out what will make them act. Well, in human beings, this is a really important point, that in human beings, belief drives action. Before somebody will act, they have to believe certain things to be true. So, for instance, if I want someone, I will use some of my own background here. For 15 years, in addition to my full-time job, I was a Weight Watchers leader. So if you're familiar with Weight Watchers weight loss program, if I wanted someone to do more exercise, well, that's the thing that I want them to do. Will it solve a problem for them? Well, if they're sitting in Weight Watchers, they probably wanted to lose weight. Will they do more exercise just because it solves a problem for them and I want them to? No, they have to believe certain things to be true. What do they have to believe? They have to believe that it would solve the problem for them, that would help them lose weight. You would say that they would have to believe that they were capable of doing some kind of exercise that would generate that result. And finally, what's everyone's objection to doing more exercise? They don't have time. So say the final belief that someone would have is that they have time to do this thing that would solve their problem. Now, taken all together, this concept of belief creates what we call the insight layer. These are the big ideas that we're trying to get across anytime that we talk to a customer or any kind of audience. We talk about we need to powerfully land a small number of big ideas. This is where those insights come from. They are the beliefs the customer needs to have. So one of the things we're going to have you all listen for today as you're listening to each other's presentations is, do you hear those beliefs? Is it clear what those big ideas are that we're trying to get across? So now we know what we want someone to do. We've asked ourselves, what is it they need to believe in order to do that? The final question is, well, what drives belief? Knowledge. People have to know things before they will believe things. So back to my do more exercise example. For someone to believe, for instance, that they have time to exercise, I need to give them knowledge about, say, for instance, that even 10-minute increments of moderate activity taken over the course of the day can add up to the 30 minutes that people recommend. And so they say, oh, if I have 10 minutes and I can do that 3 times a day, now that's knowledge that would lead to the belief that I can, in fact, fit this into my schedule. So the last thing that we think about when we're putting together a presentation is for each of those beliefs, what is the data? What are the facts, the details, the information, the concepts that people have to know before they will reach that belief that we want them to believe? So what you will hear today is all of this now strung together into a narrative, one that starts with the problem that each of these teams is solving for their customer, and one that lays out what those beliefs are, making the case by presenting data and illustration. Finally, we're going to end ideally with a call to action. What is it that we want people to do? So let me pause there. Any questions on the basic approach that we take? I want to make sure you guys have that in the back of your minds before you see anything. Great, fabulous. All right, so what is it that we are going to do today? Well, what are we looking for? Well, the first thing we're going to do is that each team is going to present. They're going to be presenting somewhere between 12 and 20 minutes each of a message that they've developed for a prospective client. We're going to start that presentation with having them tell us who they're presenting to. What is the situation? Who are we as their prospective client? So we understand what are the beliefs and knowledge that we're bringing to bear. They're going to present. It's going to be completely one way, which is absolutely artificial. We know and understand that in a real sales conversation, this is two-way. But as I started my remarks, I wanted to make sure that we're clear on, we're trying to check to make sure that all the elements are there for making this case for action. So it's going to be one way. After each presenter presents, we're going to take about a couple minutes for teams to gather their thoughts. the teams are going to first self-critique based on now hearing it officially. They're going to critique themselves and how they think they did, what was strong, what would make it even stronger. And then we're going to open it up to the rest of the room, so to the peers, to our guests, and then we, the folks from Aratium, will add in anything else that we need to at the end. Now, what are we looking for? JD is going to be passing out what we call our pitch review forms. So during each presentation, we're going to ask you all to be keeping notes to yourself on several different topics. The first one is the problem clearly stated? May I borrow that one, please? Is the problem clearly stated? Is it compelling? Is it insightful? Is it a problem that the customer or client that we are supposed to be as audience members actually has, and is one that we need to solve urgently? Second, what were the big ideas? Did you hear them? Are they powerful? Are they the big ideas that would lead you to the action that they want? Third, is the sequence right? Does the order of those big ideas make logical sense to us as audience members? Do you hear transitions between each point? In other words, is the speaker guiding us where we're going next and telling us why we're going there? Is there enough data and illustration to support the beliefs that we're trying to get across here? Have they gone beyond just data and facts, looking number 5 here, and started to bring it to life? Are they showing and not just telling? Also looking at simplicity. Is it simple enough for the customer that you're talking to? What we're looking for here is unexplained terms, making sure that those aren't in there, that there's no complexity that's more than we would understand given who we're supposed to be. And finally, is there a strong, clear call to action? Each team should also have a handout that they will give out at the beginning of the presentation. We're going to take a look at that as well, see how well it supports the conversation that they are having. And the final question you're going to ask yourself is, would I do the thing that they are asking me to do? Fairly clear? The grades are basically for your own reference. Mostly the most important thing here is the longer boxes there to keep your notes on feedback that you want to give to the presenters. Anything else? Let me see if there's anything else. Otherwise, if there are any questions on what we're doing, what we're looking for, how it's going to work from here? Okay. So we're going to start with the first team, and just as a reminder, they're going to come up. They're going to tell us who we as the audience are, who's the customer that they're talking to. They're going to present for 15 minutes-ish, and then afterwards we'll do the critique. Sound good?
We're going to do presentation,
Critique?
and stuff, and then second presentation.
Yes.
I thought it sounded like for second we're going to do back-to-back.
No, yeah, I think it's always much more effective, we found, to put the feedback right up against the presentation itself. So let me give this team a moment to set up, and we will go from there. Thank you. Normally we do this as a competition, but it's not fair since you can't vote for not your own team. We didn't feel that was going to be. Chris is like, it is a competition.
Everything is. All one big team.
Okay. All right. Everybody knows me, Brian McAfee, with the support team, and what we're going to be presenting on is a pitch on the certification suite, the product that Cobalt has created. The intended recipient of this pitch would be another certification agency. In our mind, as we were putting it together, the ideal candidate that we were thinking of would be the Association of Training and Development, formerly ASTD, right around the corner here in Alexandria. And so, without further ado, apologies for my voice. I think I'm starting to come down with something here.
What's the, just, who are we at ATD, or?
Oh, great question. Again, in an ideal scenario, we would be talking to the certification program director, and hopefully they would have somebody from their IT team there as well, whether that be an IT director or somebody that will be able to ask the correct technical questions as we go through the presentation.
Brian, a couple questions.
Can you tell me how big of a certification program we are
The
at ATD?
That research, I did a little. I believe that that particular association is in the realm of 25,000
Total.
certifications per year.
Yeah, thank you.
I believe. That was a few months ago that I looked that up.
Marty probably knows this somewhere.
We're collaborators.
You said 25 per year.
I believe so.
Oh, okay.
They obviously they focus, like a lot of associations, they focus primarily on membership first, and then certification, which is actually a separate agency. It's ATTCI, the Certification Institute. Okay, so first off, thank you all very much for your time. I believe that by the end of our conversation, you'll agree that this was time well spent. And with that being said, in the interest of time, we'll get directly to it. We've done our research, and quite simply, the majority of the certification boards out there are jeopardizing their programs due to poor information management. We actually listed a few examples of the problems that certification boards create for themselves on our handout. I believe it's on the inside on the left. But instead of boring you with specifics, what I'd like to do instead is share with you a story. I want to talk about Bob. So, now by the way, this is based on a true story. We've just changed the names of the people in the companies for obvious reasons. So Bob is the certification program director over at the Society of Topiary Gardeners. You know the guys that they make bushes into dinosaurs? And anyway, over at STG, Bob oversees a team dedicated to managing all the certified topiarists, while a separate department oversees membership within that organization. And try as he might, Bob has a lot of obstacles. Despite his and his team's best efforts, customer satisfaction ratings are on the decline, and his board is asking a lot of questions. Questions Bob can't answer, at least not without a lot of legwork. Every day, his team is inundated with phone calls like, "Has my application been received?" or "Why hasn't my check been cashed yet?" When his board asks for a geographic profile of where the certification applications are coming from, Bob has to export data from his custom certification system and edit it in Excel to make it presentable to his board, taking up hours of his time. When his board asks him how much revenue have we seen in new applications versus renewing certifications, well, that's a tough question. Payments are processed through the accounting system. And while there is integration between Great Plains and the membership system, there isn't any integration with the standalone certification system. So Bob is not only reliant on data from another department, but given that the lockbox with all the checks from that week hasn't been processed, he knows the numbers are going to be off regardless. The customer complaints that are escalated to Bob, well, he sympathizes with them. In his view, STG does quite a lot to accommodate the diverse membership demographics, including continuing to accept handwritten paper applications, as well as mailed proof of continuing education. Thing is, despite these concessions, he consistently receives feedback along the lines of, "I submitted my CEs weeks ago, and you already cashed my check. Why can't you tell me if why can't you verify if my renewal's been processed? Do you know how long I've been a member here?" Thing is, Bob doesn't know, not without accessing the membership database, a separate system. On top of all these ongoing issues that he continually tackles as the certification program director, Bob's also aware of an even bigger milestone coming up. The Association of Master Gardeners, or AMG, a larger association that has predominantly focused on membership and course offerings, is about to roll out a brand new certification of their own, the Master Pruner certification, a direct competitor with his own certification program. So Bob takes an active interest in researching alternative options. Tired of having his team be forced to transfer calls from one department to the next just to answer a few questions that should have been easily answered by one person, Bob reaches out for further information on other certification systems that are out there. Problem was, when it came time to present his findings to the board, they were unwilling to change. Since the systems were all separate, when it came time to prove just how behind the curve they were, Bob did his best to corral all the relevant data together for their review. But since there was no concrete relationships between the data, for example, the number of new applications didn't match the revenue associated with the applications from Great Plains, the board decided to err on the side of don't fix what isn't broken. Thing is, Bob's not alone in this. This sort of feedback is not surprising in the least. According to ASE, the Center for Association Leadership, the average spending by associations on technology as a percentage of, average spending by associations on technology as a percentage of total annual budget is a measly 1.6%. They argue that, and I quote, associations should consider spending 7 to 8% of their total gross revenue on technology, including staff. The benefits of this spending include the ability to deliver information and communication in the way members increasingly prefer to receive it, relevance on the next generation of members who are highly likely to accelerate their use of technology, capacity to overcome time and distance barriers to participation and utilization, capacity to add value not possible with traditional delivery vehicles, and opportunity to achieve improvements in productivity and efficiency. Again, all of that straight from ASE. As for Bob and his scenario again, based on real situation that we worked with, Bob fought really hard and truly cared for his customer base, but was thwarted by outdated information management, along with a dependency on additional overhead for those other systems that he needed data from. To top it all off, without the ability to pull all that data together in a cohesive fashion, he was unable to accurately present the big picture to his board, and they, in turn, made an uninformed decision that puts his program at risk. And that's the thing. Most current certification systems out there, well, they typically tackle general information and general information only. These systems are built to handle surface data or the process, and they almost always lack integration, the key ingredient in presenting the big data holistic view of the business and the customer. Think of it this way. Imagine what it was like when hospitals were first introduced to the X-ray. For the first time, doctors could now get an inside look at their patients. Absolutely amazing. But remember now, the X-ray image is a static 2D image. In order to see the subject from a different angle, or if you will, gain a different perspective, you'd have to take multiple X-rays. Not only that, there's no overlay. You'd still have to review them individually, one at a time, just like Bob had to do with those data exports. The majority of current certification systems give you a snapshot of a single data set, with no relationship to the other data sets, save for you manually putting them together yourself. It's far better than the alternative, not having a system at all, but it has its obvious limitations. Now, think about technology advancements within the medical industry. In addition to the X-ray, we now have the magnetic resonance imaging, or MRI, machine. An MRI machine not only gives the doctors and technicians an inside look at their subject, but it takes multiple snapshots and puts them together. The end result? With the availability of this newer, more advanced technology, doctors can now get a 360-degree view of their subject and can even manipulate it to explore further within. The biggest issue for anyone relying solely on outdated technology, whether it be the X-ray or the poor information management, is that if you can't see the whole thing, you'll never know that there's a problem or where it is. In both cases, the evolution of technology has provided us with the opportunity to take a more holistic view of the data that we already have, giving us a 360-degree view of the community that we serve. We've seen many companies utilize a basic computer system that gathers relevant data from both inside and outside an organization, but since they're typically isolated from other systems, they're not being fully utilized. The associations that we've worked with over the last 20 years typically have a centralized database where all the collected data is processed and stored. Most of these types of systems are constantly being updated. Again, think of the overhead. And they have some type of reporting mechanism so that anyone who has access to it can run some pre-canned reports. Now, granted, that's important. It allows the executives of the board to quickly see the numbers, like how many certifications have been granted in a quarter, or how many applications have been received, etc. Unfortunately, many companies view their certification systems as a standalone system, much like their accounting system, and there's no integration with any of the other key systems. Since most certification systems don't allow for integration, or if they do, not easily, it's hard to get a more complete picture of your customer and your relationship with them. Basically, what we're saying is we've seen businesses and associations make the same mistakes time and again, but some organizations have figured out a solution. Remember how we said Bob was anticipating a competitor, the made-up Association of Master Gardeners, would be introducing a similar certification program in direct communication or in direct competition with his? Well, and again, these are based on true events. We just changed the names. Let me tell you about Charlene, the certification program director over at AMG. She was able to get board approval for a customized certification system, except her system offered integration with the already existing membership and accounting systems, as well as a third-party testing vendor. Charlene's story is one of success. Her team now has full access to all the data collected throughout the customer lifecycle, from when they were a prospect, through their application process, to their current certification, as well as their continuing education in order to recertify. Let me see if I can't help you paint a picture. So this hasn't happened. It could. All the functionality exists, but I just want to help you visualize. Imagine Charlene and her team are at their annual conference in Vegas this year. All the attendees at the conference, by the way, registered and paid for it online through the new system. During the conference, there are a number of courses being offered by AMG, some of which count as continuing education credit towards new and recertifying applicants. Charlene and her team, with their tablets in hand, can access their system and see every registration for every course and presentation during the conference. They have access to all of the registration details, so they were able to prepare in advance for any special accommodations, such as sign language interpreters or wheelchair access. Those attendees taking a test for continuing education credit, again, a third-party system, will have their results imported, and the system will automatically recalculate their progress and possibly even grant their certification if that was the only remaining requirement. Let's take it a step further. Say that Charlene wants to get some FaceTime with some of the attendees. She can use her tablet to open up the registration of a particular class, spotting a familiar name. She can open that person's contact record and see every email conversation and phone call they've had with her team. She can see what support cases, if any, the member has opened with the staff back at AMG. She can see how far along that person is with their certification application and can also see what level of membership they hold and when it expires. Heck, Charlene can even see what books and other products the member purchased from their online store. Now, after scanning through all the integrated data to get a full mental picture of who she's speaking with, Charlene can go and have an intelligent conversation with the member. And she can do all of that from her tablet while walking the halls of the conference. Point in fact, Charlene's team is currently building an app that members can log continuing education from their phone, making their certification even more attractive than the one offered by Bob's association. Bob has the X-ray machine, Charlene has the MRI. Charlene clearly has the advantage. And the writing's been on the wall for some time, too. Again, quoting ASAE, technology will fundamentally change the way associations deliver value. It will enhance or replace existing delivery systems. It will create new ways to add value that were not conceivable in the past. The effective association of the future will be substantially technology-based. Simply put, we believe that, in this day and age, all companies need to be using a certification system that is also a CRM, or Customer Relationship Management System. CRM is actually a strategy for managing all your company's relationships, not only the underlying data. And with only a little research, the proof is out there. A quick read, speaking frankly about customer relationship management, illuminates many of the metrics you're probably curious about. CRM technology allows you to learn who your most profitable customers are. This practice is significant because in most markets, 80% or more of the profits come from 20% or less of the customers. Being able to identify top customers and what makes them so will make you more cognizant of the patterns that create new ones just like them. CRM applications include dashboards and list management tools that can leverage existing data to identify the very important and valuable 20% and the people who are nurturing those relationships. In addition to that, there was also a Forrester research report supported by more recent studies. Drawing from interviews with executives at 22 large North American companies to learn about their CRM successes. All 22 saw increased revenue, lower costs, higher ROI, and improved competitive strength, thanks to following CRM best practices. We're going to come back to best practices, by the way. The thing is, there's quite a few CRM systems out there to choose from, so how do you choose? We firmly believe that a certification system should be based on Microsoft Dynamics CRM. That's what we promote as the best option. Why? Well, firstly, a lot of folks out there have preconceived notions about a product based solely on the manufacturer. Take Apple, for example. People, by and large, are either Android or iOS. They're either Mac or PC. But that being said, regardless of your personal bias, you can't deny the sheer size and scope of Microsoft's presence in the modern workplace. Even if you are using a Mac instead of a PC, you're still using Microsoft Office. So with Microsoft Dynamics CRM, you've got the support and accessibility of one of the largest software corporations at your fingertips, and they're constantly advancing the software and enhancing the capabilities of the product. Since it is a Microsoft product, you have literally a worldwide network of communities and user groups created and dedicated around the Microsoft Dynamics CRM product. Through these communities and more, you have a vast amount of resources to support and supplement your investment. And again, it's a Microsoft product, so you have direct compatibility straight out of the box with the Microsoft Office suite of products. And speaking of Office, if you happen to use Outlook as your email program, you can even utilize a plugin to access all of your CRM data through Outlook instead of a web browser. Now, what about your specific certification process and IT needs? We've touted the building block, Microsoft Dynamics CRM, but what about Cobalt's certification system? When you were tasked with looking into certification systems, you probably started with a list of features, your must-haves. You're not going to be able to, nor should you try to, sell the other decision makers on a product that doesn't meet those basic requirements. As you can see on the screen, Cobalt matches or exceeds its competitors in satisfying those requirements. Almost more important than the current feature set, since we've already established that constant evolution is a requirement for your business to remain relevant, you should be looking for a product that has shown the same evolution, one that's changed to meet emerging requirements, and one that has a solid plan for the future. Cobalt is constantly reevaluating the product functionality, incorporating newly discovered client and prospect requirements, and leveraging new features provided by the Dynamics CRM platform. Also, we make our product roadmap visible publicly so you can see what we're working on and where we're going with it. Without actually using a system, it's difficult to ensure it will meet the organization's needs, but while this isn't a hands-on experience, we can demonstrate, and all these statistics are in your handout, by the way, we can demonstrate a long track record of satisfying the needs of a large and varied collection of certification boards. Our certification suite, and I believe this is right in the middle, our certification suite has been in production for over 10 years. Our products are being utilized by over 100 organizations with over 1,000 staff and over 5 million customers. Our product can support the largest of certification organizations. It's been used by a board with over 500,000 certified professionals. And lastly, we've also migrated more than 150 customers from legacy systems to the Microsoft Dynamics CRM platform. For anyone familiar with data migration, you know what a headache that can turn into. Cobalt's proven data migration methodology has been tested and perfected. Cobalt's project teams have not only successfully implemented over 100 systems, but have proven success helping certification groups like SHRM, PTCB, CSI, and CTA expand their programs and offerings. And you may not be familiar with all those names, I understand, but we do have some testimonials from them on the handout as well. One specific example we'd like to share with you is PTCB, the Pharmacy Technician Certification Board. Anytime that you've gone to a CVS or Walgreens or Rite Aid and received assistance at the pharmacy counter, those folks are certified through PTCB. So think about the numbers here. How many pharmacies and technicians across the United States and the U.S. territories? Cobalt helped PTCB consolidate their disparate databases, integrate with their testing vendor, and create an extensive sponsor portal. A sponsor portal, by the way, it allows for technician sponsors like CVS or Walgreens to the convenience of paying for their employees and tracking their status. In any case, the system that Cobalt and PTCB collaborated to create has provided the infrastructure to support a 9% growth in the certification application base, and I believe I have a screen for this, in new applicants, a 26% growth in recertifications from 2010 to 2014. Now, I realize that was a lot of numbers thrown at you to prove how successful Cobalt is with system implementations, but any system transition is going to be disruptive. The team at Cobalt's prepared for this, and we're also prepared to help you during this transition. Cobalt staff has extensive experience implementing certification systems. The leadership team alone has 80-plus years of collective experience implementing software products built using Microsoft Dynamics CRM. And Cobalt's capable staff, and I mean every single one of them, they are all certified in Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and your project team will consist of a certified project manager and a Microsoft certified engineer. Now, remember that report from Forrester Research that we mentioned earlier about the 22 large North American companies that saw increased revenue, higher ROI, and all that? Well, there was a key piece to that report we didn't previously mention, and I quote, "Companies that follow best practices for high-level sponsorship, end-user adoption, and usability, and those who consistently stay the course when it comes to developing and rolling out CRM projects across the organization are succeeding." That's why, when you implement software with Cobalt, your project team is there every step of the way to guide you through the phases of the project from the kickoff to the go-live and end-user adoption phase. Because engagement is critical to the success of any software implementation, you're always considered an integral part of the project team, and your project manager will always involve you in all phases of the project. Your project team will not only work with you to continuously manage timeline, scope, and cost throughout the project, but will also provide your team with full access to project tasks as they move throughout the project lifecycle, allowing for full transparency and collaboration. So why am I taking so much time to talk about Cobalt project management methodology? Let me tell you one more story. A few years ago, a nationwide professional society came to Cobalt with one goal in sight: go live with a fully functional certification system that would support the launch of a new certification program in only 8 months. Since the success of the launch of the program was dependent upon a successful project, there was extensive involvement from the executive and management teams in this high-profile project. The timeline was fixed, and the system needed e-commerce functionality, integrations with an AMS, LMS, and a third-party exam provider, and needed to be scalable to handle large volumes of certification applications. Communication, flexibility, and effective decision-making and smart development were critical for success. Throughout the project, the Cobalt team was in constant communication with the customer, and Cobalt's agile software development techniques allowed the team to be flexible and quickly respond to change, while keeping the project on track and heading in the right direction. The result? An infrastructure that supported the launch of an extremely successful certification program. In the first year of launch of the system, over 85,000 certifications were granted, and over 100,000 certification applications were received. The system was so robust that it supported the receipt of 1,200 applications in the first month that it went live. And, as I'm sure you're familiar, many certification programs have application windows and deadlines. Well, in a recent application window from September and October of 2015, the number of applications were far larger than that, from 5,800 to 8,800 each month, not to mention the strong relationship forged between Cobalt staff and the end users. So, a quick recap of what we've discussed. Certification boards that are using independent certification management systems are, quite simply, jeopardizing the future of their certification program by relying on outdated information management practices. Customers are frustrated with the existing quality of customer service. Executives are using disparate, incomplete data to make decisions. Program directors lack the ability to do robust reporting and analysis, and the support of multiple outdated systems create unnecessary IT overhead. Our recommendation is to adopt a certification management system based on a CRM system. Specifically, we demonstrated how the team at Cobalt can successfully implement the Cobalt certification suite built on Microsoft Dynamics CRM, integrating your available data and thus providing you with true 360-degree view of your customers, who they truly are, and what they're doing. The next step in the process is to give a tailored demo of our system to your project team, then move forward with the contracts and kick off the implementation. The demo would be approximately 30 minutes to an hour based on your questions, where our Director of Product Management would stop by or invite you to our conference center, depending upon your availability, and walk you through general features and functionality of our certification suite. If that sounds good, we could schedule a demo for next week and provide you with a draft of the contract the day after. Sound like a plan?
Usually it's often, look at your own notes, but often work with the person next to you.
Right, sorry.
Sorry?
Yeah.
And we can bounce ideas off each other. It's just 3 minutes, 4 minutes?
3 minutes. So, for you to keep notes on that side. So, Chris, tell us who we are, what stage of the conversation, and
Sure.
what the client would or would not have asked for coming in.
Right. So our scenario is that you guys are either practice directors at a large consulting firm, a CRM practice director at a large consulting firm, or a principal at a smaller CRM partner like Cobalt. And so we're giving you a pitch, and for I think for this, it's our first conversation about this topic, introductory conversation. So,
Any other questions from this group about who you are?
Pitch the what?
well, you're going to find out. Yeah, I think we'll leave it open-ended for now. If that's, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
Ready?
Ready when you are.
Great. So, thank you for joining me today to talk about a better way to migrate your customers to CRM Online. Before we start, I want to point out the handouts you've all been given. I'll be referencing it throughout the presentation, and it contains all the information you'll need to take back to your team. As partners, we've all seen Microsoft's cloud offering slowly catch up to and perhaps surpass its on-premises sibling. Ease of deployment, seamless updates, along with native integration with Office 365 and Power BI, have customers clamoring to upgrade. You can see from this chart, the spending for online and software as a service CRM has now overtaken on-premises in recent years, and this trend shows no sign of slowing down. I'm showing you this chart because you would think that this trend translates into a huge opportunity for us partners, and it does, but it's not without its challenges. Anyone who's completed a migration to CRM Online knows that it's not an easy and straightforward task. Even worse, most customers believe it should be inexpensive and painless to upgrade software from one version to another. It might even seem like the risk and cost outweigh the benefits, and communicating the upgrade path to customers can lead to frustration and disappointment, despite all our best efforts and available resources. Up until now, you and your customers have had 3 ways to migrate from a hosted or on-premises CRM instance to CRM Online. You can use Microsoft's built-in import tools. You can use a third-party integration solution such as KingswaySoft or Scribe, or you can build your own custom application to migrate the data. Any of these approaches is hurting you and your customers more than you might realize. But the 4th option, doing nothing, will have a long-term impact on your reputation and your bottom line. So let's talk about what's wrong with these options. Page 3 of your handout contains these details as well if you'd like to follow along. On the surface, the standard CRM import wizard and bulk import tools seem promising. They're inexpensive, and you can use standard text files to import your data into CRM with no advanced database or programming experience. This sounds simple enough, so you're probably wondering, why can't they be used for migrations? The answer is, you're trying to do too much with these tools. The name gives them away. These are import tools, not migration tools. They were built to import or update a small number of records, not migrate an entire system. In order to migrate large amounts of data, you would need to export all of your existing CRM records and then import the files individually. No matter how careful you plan the import, you'll likely have to make multiple passes to avoid losing the relationships. While you're making these passes, nobody can access the system. Using these built-in import tools is like moving on your own. It's awful. If it's just you, it takes a lot of time, and if you aren't careful, things will break. We all know there's a better way. So now that we've talked about the problems with the built-in tools, what other tools are available? Both Scribe and KingswaySoft are popular third-party solutions for integrations and migrations, and they are definitely a step up from the built-in import tools. The main reason is because they've included CRM adapters, and you can also automate the import process once you've set everything up. The issue with these tools is that they require you to be intimately familiar with the CRM data and relationships, as well as all of the complex rules that CRM has in place for how and when data can be created. This is like renting a U-Haul truck. It's great because you have a better tool to do the job, but you still have to pack up all the boxes and do the work yourself. Once again, these tools require you to make multiple passes at the data and freeze your users out. We had a company come to us after attempting a fairly vanilla CRM migration from 2011 to CRM Online. They used Scribe, and it took them about 100 hours of trial and error over the course of several weeks before they got their data into a minimally acceptable state. In the end, minimally acceptable meant leaving behind 3 years of historical emails because it was too complex to migrate them using the tool they purchased. Now their sales reps have to go back into the old CRM 2011 system to double check for prior communication with prospects. To be fair, these third-party tools are flexible and in the right hands can be powerful for data integrations, but they are not migration tools. At this point, you're probably thinking, if I have to do all this extra work and use these other tools, why not build my own tool or write a custom application to migrate the data myself? After all, we have consultants and developers with years of experience with CRM, and it'd be built to do exactly what we want it to. The answer to this is, of course you can, but be prepared to spend hundreds of hours to develop and test the tool. The same pitfalls we discussed already will still need to be accounted for. You'll need to figure out the techniques to create records in CRM the right way. If you don't handle this correctly, you'll end up with missing records and others with incorrect statuses. Your customers think they've hired a moving company that knows everything and will be able to make the migration with minimal impact on their business operations. And at first it might look okay, but after a few days, weeks, or months of using the new system, you'll find missing records, relationships, and other gotchas that will require additional work. At this point, it might be too late because records have been updated since the import, so you won't have a clear path to fix the problems. Take a look at this entity diagram. This will become your worst nightmare when you start a data migration project. And this example is only the out-of-the-box CRM sales module. We all know that one of the great features of CRM is that it allows users to create new entities, fields, and relationships on the fly. Of course, it's likely that your customers will have zero documentation of what they've done to customize the system, but they'll expect it to survive intact. Just like you would expect professional movers not to break your grandmother's china. In the end, you could probably pull this off, but now your customers are spending a large amount of their budget on a project that does not add a lot of value to their business. And their perspective is likely that this should be a pretty straightforward effort. I assume by now you're thinking, if there's no cost-effective, reliable way to migrate my customers, can't we just ignore CRM Online as an option? This might work in the short term, but it's not a viable long-term solution. Microsoft is pushing everybody to CRM Online by releasing online first and online only features like Office 365 and Power BI integration. By remaining on premises, your customers are missing out on an incredibly powerful integration and data analysis tools, and the disparity is only going to grow over time. If you can't migrate customers without shutting down their operations or charging them a lot of money, it's going to lead to frustrated customers, frustrated staff, and a negative impact on your reputation. Your customers still want to migrate, but they're going to find another partner who can deliver, or at least promise that they can deliver. This is the worst case scenario for us as partners. Customers look at this and say, we're just moving from one version to another. How can it possibly cost this much and be this painful? It's a good question. I recently read a thread on the CRM UG online community where a 2011 customer was frustrated that her partner had quoted her $10,000 to upgrade to CRM Online. She wasn't happy with the price tag, but other customers and partners all chimed in to reassure her that this was a reasonable cost. Your customers don't think it should cost this much, and neither do we. What if there were a cost-effective way to reliably move data, accounting for entity relationships, and nearly eliminating disruption to customers without a lot of staff time? Wouldn't you want to make that available to your clients? Okay. Now let's talk about what a solution like that would look like. We've included all the details on pages 4 and 5 of your handout so you can follow along. You'd want a purpose-built tool for migrating and replicating your data. You'd want a tool that understands the data and how it's all related. Not an integration or import tool, a migration tool. You'd want all of the good and none of the bad. Snapshot was built specifically to do two things: migrate data from one CRM instance to another and create a replicated copy of that data in SQL Azure. That's it. So now you're thinking, that sounds good, but how does it solve the problems we've been discussing? We have more than 100 customers running CRM 2011, So we needed a cost-effective and repeatable solution to migrate them. Remember that company we talked about that had issues migrating their data with third-party tools? That was actually us. After this experience and a lot of trial and error with the options we reviewed, we decided to build Snapshot. Snapshot knows your system better than you do. It reads the metadata to figure out all the entities, fields, and relationships without you having to tell it anything. Snapshot also examines the relationships to determine the most efficient way to import the data, while at the same time reducing the number of missing records and broken relationships. Wait, you said this was going to solve all of our problems, but there's still going to be broken relationships? Yes, but the difference is that we track and resolve these broken relationships. A common scenario involves migrating contacts and accounts. So let's look at a pretty straightforward example. Marty is the primary contact for Sherm in our CRM system, and Sherm is his parent account. Seems simple enough, but if you import Marty's contact record before you import Sherm's account record, he has no parent account. If you import Sherm's account record before Marty's contact record, there's no primary contact. These are what we refer to as orphaned records. With the options we discussed earlier, you would need to first import all of your contacts, then import accounts, and finally re-import contacts again to make sure all of the relationships are set. This is fine if you're dealing with a handful of records, but if you've got thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of contacts and accounts, this can take days to accomplish. With Snapshot, it's all handled for you. We keep track of these orphans and reconnect them automatically as the data flows into the target system. Now you're probably thinking, Snapshot's doing some pretty complicated things. What happens if something goes wrong? In addition to tracking orphaned records, Snapshot includes robust logging, so we know if there's an issue when we try to create a record. Unlike other tools that fail and force you to start over, Snapshot keeps going and provides you with a report once the migration is completed. If the issues can be resolved, you simply rerun Snapshot. Let's say you forgot to include an entity in the initial migration because you weren't aware that it was being used. Simply rerun Snapshot for that entity, and it'll resolve all the orphans and fix any errors. So now you're asking yourself, with all this complex logic, is it difficult to set up? We don't think so. We've been able to simplify the setup process so that it's 5 simple steps. Choose migrate, replicate, or both. Enter your server info, map your users, check that everything looks okay, select your entities, and run it. It's that easy. The final question that everyone always has is, how long does it take to run? And the answer is, with Snapshot, it doesn't matter. We've included the ability to track and copy changes during the migration. This means that users can continue to use the current CRM while the data is migrated. I'll pause for a second while that last one sinks in. This feature is a game changer for data migrations. No more having to do it over the weekend or freezing users out of the system while you complete the migration. Snapshot syncs the changes as it goes and then lets you know when it's done. You can simply turn off the old system and you're ready to go. Migrating to CRM Online is a time-consuming and challenging process that's hard to sell to customers who want the latest features but don't see the value in the current migration process. As a partner like you, we've been through all the options, and Snapshot is our way of modernizing the process by giving customers the migration they want with the ease they expect. Today, we're looking for partners to pilot Snapshot with real data so that we can show you how powerful the tool is. You can then let us know what features work for your needs, what doesn't, and what you'd like to see before we release the final version to market. We've included the details on how to get started on the back of the handout. Thank you for coming today. We look forward to working with you.